everybody, it's the 13th Wolfman. You know what today is? Today is day 21 of the 31 Days of Horror. Man, we are 2/3 of the way through 31 days. I mean, this is the part that sucks. I say this every time I do this. This year is really special to me because I didn't get to do it last year, as you guys have heard. I had a medical condition that kept me off my feet, so I wasn't able to do this. So I'm back this year, and now the month is just flying by, and that just kind of sucks. Oh well. We'll deal with it, you know, the way we do. 31 movies, 31 days, talk about them all. 31 days of horror in 31 days. There's people doing this. There's Brother Max, Mood 616, Double Shot J, Carly. There's Jennifer Toshi, Professor Macabro, Chill Pilgrim over at Letterboxd. Tony has 9 fingers on TikTok. Random Horror. I think Retro Horror's doing it. Just so many people doing this. It's such a fun thing to do. You know, I mean, honestly, if you haven't done this, and I mean, doesn't mean you have to sit down and document doing it, like we're doing. But if you haven't done this, I mean, it's a fun thing. Whether it's watching movies from Tubi or movies from your collection, like here in the Doom Room, 31 movies, 31 days. You just sit down, you write out a list. You're like, okay, I want to do 31 movies, and you know, whether it's 31 horror films, and you just go through your stuff, and it's like, okay, this, you know, and it's a movie a day. What is that? 2 hours out of your day? Okay, you know, and then if you want to document it, like we're doing, like the people that I mentioned are doing, you know, that's a whole nother thing. That's a little bit of time out, but if you want to do that, that's even more fun. Because then we get to see what you get to watch. Now, like, subscribe, share, and comment. I always want to know what you have to say. Did I talk you into doing it 31 days? Today's movie is another Barbara Steele film, and it is The Curse of the Crimson Altar. Now, the title in itself, you know, you just kind of go, it sounds like a cool title. You know, you're like, oh, The Curse of the Crimson Altar. It doesn't really, I mean, there is an altar. They don't really talk too much about it being a crimson altar. They don't really talk too much about the curse, you know. For Barbara Steele movies, I'm really kind of surprised that she was in this movie. Because... So, Barbara Steele started acting in, like, the late 50s, like 57, 58. She was in small parts here and there. In 1960, she got her first starring role in Black Sunday, which you guys have heard me talk endlessly about being my favorite Barbara Steele movie. And it was Mario Bava's directorial debut. You know, so... And it was a big movie. So from that point on, she made stuff like The Pit and the Pendulum, Nightmare Castle, Castle of Blood, you know. All these movies, and, you know, they would always say, with Barbara Steele in it, you know. Hey, we got a big name. By the time you get to The Curse of the Crimson Altar, it's 1968. It's 8 years later. Her fame is still, you know, pretty big for who she is. And she's in a movie with 3 other horror legends. One being Boris Karloff. This is the last movie that Boris Karloff makes, or actually, no, this is the last movie that gets released during his lifetime. He makes one more movie that gets released after his death. But this is the last one he makes that gets released during his lifetime. Christopher Lee... Need I say more? The Hammer legend himself, you know, Dracula and whatnot. And Michael Gough. I'm not I'm not positive how to pronounce his last name. So it's Gough. I don't know if it's Go or Gauche or Guh or what. But he went on to be Alfred in the 80s and 90s Batman movies. So if you don't know who I'm talking about, you know, that should help. He was in tons of Hammer stuff back in the 60s, and the 70s. So we have these 3 horror legends, and then we have Barbara Steele, who was a 4th horror legend in this movie. You would think this movie would be stacked, right? Great plot, great, the story's okay. This is actually, according to Christopher Lee, this is the worst movie he's been in. There's a lot of talking in this movie, not a lot of action. I mean, it's just a lot of exposition. So the story goes is there are these 2 brothers, the Manning brothers, Robert and Peter, and they own an antiquities shop in London. And Peter is on the road trying to find antiquities to bring back to the shop to sell. When one day he gets a letter, his brother Robert gets a letter from Peter saying, yeah, I'm in Greymarsh. If you want to get hold of me, this is the phone number you can reach me at. They call the number, and Christopher Lee's character says, I'm sorry, I don't know who Peter Manning is. I've never met the man. Oh, okay. Well, his brother's not convinced, so he heads out to Greymarsh to do some digging and find out what happened to his brother. He winds up at the inn that his brother stayed at, which is owned by Christopher Lee. And he asked Christopher Lee face to face, do you know my brother? And he's like, no, I'm sorry. I know you called, but I can't help you. And I don't know a Peter Manning, So he's like, okay. Well, there's a lot going on in this movie, and I mean, it really unfolds into this kind of like, what happened to Peter Manning would have been more of a title for this movie rather than The Curse of the Crimson Altar. There is an altar, there is a witch, there is witchcraft in this movie. Boris Karloff plays the foremost expert on witchcraft. He's in a wheelchair, and he's in a wheelchair because in real life he had pneumonia and rheumatoid arthritis at this time. So a lot of the stuff, there's like a couple of scenes where he's out of the chair, but for the most part, he's wheelchair bound. And Barbara Steele's in it, but she has a very small part. I mean, for it to be Barbara, I mean, when you watch the beginning of the movie, they're like Boris Karloff, Christopher Lee, Barbara Steele, and you're like, okay, so she's in it. But the part is so small. She plays Lavinia. Lavinia is a witch that was burned back in the 1600s. I love these movies where, witches are burned and they're like, oh, well, you know what, you can hold your breath more than a second. Hey, you must be a witch. When you find out what all the little trickery was to determine whether or not people were witches, there was so much BS about it. There was a dunking one where they would dunk you in a chair. They would tie you in a chair and they'd dunk you. And if you lived, you were a witch. If you died, well, then you died. But if you lived and you were a witch, they were going to burn you at the stake anyways. So you die no matter what. I mean, this is just this is the 15th, 16th century version of, high school cliques. It's like, hey, I don't like so and so. Let's call them a witch and we'll get them out. It's really, really all it was. Someone's popular. Ooh, we must get rid of them. It was MTV's The Challenge back in the 1600s. But, so she plays this small part of Lavinia, a witch that was burned, and it's significant, and you do get to see her more than once, but she's covered in blue paint, or blue body makeup, and it really distracts from the fact of how beautiful, Barbara Steele really is. So this was an okay movie. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of action going on here. Out of the Barbara Steele films, this is 1 3/4 chainsaws. I mean, it's got an interesting story, I'll give you that, but not a whole lot happens, and the ending is just kind of weird. I don't know what else to say. I don't want to say too much about it if you haven't seen it. But I want to know, if you're a Barbara Steele fan and you have seen this movie, where does this movie fall in your top 10? Or does it? I mean, I know she's made a ton of movies, and there's others, but does this fall in your top 10 or your top 20? That being said, like I said before, like, subscribe, share, comment. I am the 13th Wolfman, and I'm on the prowl.